I always want to be like dancing at that part, like
Dancing, baby.
Go, keep it going.
I was air drumming. I don't know if you saw me or not.
Oh, that do 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 do. Yeah,
Do.
very Genesis.
Yeah, a little
Phil
John
Collins.
Mellencamp, Pink Houses, too.
Got it.
Pulling it local for you there, Indiana boy. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey,
The episode already in progress, apparently. This is the Culture-Based Podcast. We are on, what episode is this? 29. Episode 29, January 30th. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy to be with you. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. Beautiful. Flannel. Per usual. The beauty, anyway, not the flannel. Flannel's not usual.
It's cute.
It is cute. Today we're going to talk about bottlenecking your team. Yay!
Yeah, everyone gets
a real lighthearted episode, really, if you get down to it. But you know what, Blake? Everybody loves a funnel. Am I right? Everybody. It's a buzzword right now. Sales funnel, process funnel, even funnel cake. I love funnel cake. You know what I mean? When various items are streamlined into a singular end result, everybody wins, Blake. Everybody, including you. You can win too. You can be a winner. But what happens when the funnel gets clogged? Who do we look to? How do we clear the path to success again? Let's do some preventative maintenance that's necessary to keep our teams from getting backed up.
Plumber reference, right?
Reference.
It's a good plumber reference. Love a good plumber. Gotta love a good plumber.
Who doesn't? Right. Mario and Luigi.
Right. Gosh,
famous plumbers.
Best selling game ever.
Harry and Marv, Home Alone. What were they driving around in? Plumbing van.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Okay,
well, that's not necessarily the heroes of the story. I think Mario and Luigi was definitely like, yeah,
right. But people still like them.
That's true. I don't have anything else to say about that.
Okay,
I guess.
Apparently, Blake has the story of Harry and Marv a little too close to home. Maybe he was left home alone at one point. I don't know. Anyway, before we dive into all the funnel stuff, not necessarily the plumbing stuff. I want to remind you to subscribe on the audio podcast platform if that's where you found us. Would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review. That helps get this content even further to people like you who would benefit from it. Share it with a friend if you know someone who could use it as well. If you're watching on YouTube, hello there. Get to see Blake's flannel. I wish it was Friday because it'd be Flannel Friday. Now he's blowing air kisses. See the things you're missing by not watching us on YouTube? Yeah. Oh. It's good.
It's like a Jude Law smolder right there.
It is quite the smolder. You're missing it. But if you are here on YouTube and you didn't miss it, thank you for that. I would love for you to hit the like button, get our likes up, bing, 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 and subscribe, ring the bell. So every time we drop a video content or the threat of us going live one day will happen, you'll know about it before anyone else. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the Facebook at The Culture Base, BASE, not BASS, not that kind of base. That is base. You know what I mean? It's different base. It's like home base, tech, Ghost Man on first.
Wonder if we can get Megan Trainor to do our theme song.
To be all about that culture base. Like we'll just drop culture in. I'm all about that culture base. Just a guy going, culture.
That's what we need right there.
Yeah. Megan Trainor is a big fan of the show. So if you're watching, just go ahead and shoot us a message. We'll get that thing rolling for you.
I don't know if you legally have to say that that's not true, but hopefully it's assumed.
Listen, I don't think you even know if she is or not.
I don't know what the legal police do on their pastime. I don't know why they come across our podcast, but just in case, Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend named Megan who is a professional trainer. So,
oh, okay. Well, they're definitely going to pick up on it then.
That's also a lie. But anyway, you can also find us at theculturebase.com. Grab your free 30-minute strategy session with us two goofballs. Talk about how we can help you build these scalable teams and the discussions that we're having on these podcast episodes. We love to have those conversations with you and the unique circumstances that surround it with your team. So on to the show. We're talking about this bottlenecking thing. Super positive, right? Before we get into it, I thought it'd be helpful for us to just kind of define what this whole bottlenecking term is. I think most people kind of understand in the business and culture realm that we're talking about, what we mean when we say bottlenecking. But every now and then you got to ring up old Webster, say, give us the deal, Web.
I've never called a Webster.
You've
I
never
think
called
that
a
it's
Webster?
always been a book, maybe online, the World Wide Webs, according to DP. But
No, didn't
or
say that this time.
um,
And you got to get better friends. Okay, you got to make friends with old
you're
Webster.
calling Webster.
I'm
I don't
calling him
know that
up.
you know Webster.
Why am I wasting my time trying to look something up when I can just call the guy and be like, "Hey man, what's this mean?" Anyway, that's what I did. I called Webb and I asked him to say, "Hey Webb, what's bottlenecking mean?" You know what he told me? He says, "A bottleneck is a point of congestion in a production system that slows or stops progress." Pay attention to this next part because that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. Short-term bottlenecks are temporary and often caused by labor shortage. It's a people issue. Long-term bottlenecks, however, are more incorporated into the system itself and characterized by inefficient machinery or processes.
Hmm.
Processes. So there are 4 P's of bottlenecking that we want to cover today, Blake. Why don't you just lay out those for us real quick?
Yeah. So the 4 P's of bottlenecking. And we were kind of like coming up with these, and we're like, they all got to be P's because like we
Well,
had
the
2
first 2
all of
were
a
P.
sudden. They're like P, P. And we're like, we can't throw a random Q in
It's
here. That's just
there's too
ridiculous.
much church background in us to not
This,
alliterate this thing.
I mean, how can we be charismatic and not have alliteration at the same time? So we're fixing this.
Hallelujah, joy to the world.
All right. So, as Baby Jesus says, it is process, people, party, and policy. Okay. So, today we're going to kind of cover the 2 on people and process that we kind of talked about earlier. However, I do think it's important for us to talk about the other 2 just at a real base level so that we can understand okay, here are the other aspects that you should think about. But the importance of defining these things has to do with clarity and focus because if you like you can talk to almost anyone in your industry, in your company, in your organization and say we've got a bottleneck and they'll go yeah, you do. And you're going to be like okay, you see it too, right? Okay, so what is it? And everyone's going to come with different things, okay, for what the reason is that there's a bottleneck or what the issue is for the bottleneck. I think when you're able to compartmentalize what the issues are, your solution to those issues becomes different. And it feels way less like overwhelming because so much of solving problems is not about the thing you're doing to fix the problem. It's about truly identifying the problem. And
Yeah.
so when you can identify it, you can put it into a category and you can start taking things on. So that's why we love the idea of compartmentalizing or adding things. And I'm sure the 4 P's probably could be 12 P's of bottlenecking.
Right.
We just only had the mental capacity for 4. So sorry, go find someone smarter. But what we came up with first is the party based, okay, which is really like third party. So somewhere in your process, you're using people who aren't part of your team. They're more, or they are part of your team. They're just not part of your W2 company or your internal team. They're maybe part of the team that helps you deliver your product, helps you get the content for your product. It's
Contractors, vendors.
subcontract, exactly. Vendors, subcontractors, third party people. They're still part of your team, but there is a lot of times part of your process that hinges on that. And there are a lot of things you can do about that. You know, to us in the past, it depends on what it is. For my electrical company, there was an aspect of, man, we're using, excavation people all the time, but we can't. And one of our big things is we can't own the schedule, and that hurts. We want to own the schedule as best as we can. So we can do multiple things. We can go find another excavation company, or we can bring it in house and have an element of control over it. And those are I'm not saying that's right or that's wrong. Those become you decisions, but identifying the bottleneck is what you have to do first and say, yeah, that's a third party issue that we need to figure it out. Okay. The next one is policy based. So policy based is like, gosh, these are laws. These are standards the government has, or your local government. These are things you can and can't do because the IRS is going to come after you, or there are taxable things. Like you got to think through that and compartmentalize that separate, because your solutions to that become different. Man, the worst thing in the world is we can't do this because policy says this. Change policy. Like, go get in a congressman's ear and just like, hey, we really need to fix this. Here's why. Create pushes in that way. And we're not going to spend a lot of time there. I just think it's important that if
Right.
you think the bottleneck is final, you don't live in America. Okay. Because this is one of those places that kind of stuff can continually change with different perspectives and push, and laws can change. And so I would just say on that, don't let that be final. Okay. There are other solutions. So
Yeah, so like that, we're just going to cover those two briefly, the party based one or the policy based bottlenecking issue, just so that you know that that does exist. But for the sake of the definition that we read, that our buddy Webster told us about at the beginning of this, he talked about a short term issue with bottlenecking is usually a people issue or people based problem. Then he also said the longer term issue with bottlenecking is probably a process based problem. And what we're getting at here, we're just going to kind of spend the rest of our time today fleshing out the process based and the people based. And what we're getting at here is that the process hasn't maybe been fleshed out at all. Right? Maybe you had an opportunity as a team to, like, yeah, we see this as a need, but we just haven't had the discipline to sit down and really process, really flesh out this process so that everybody understands what's going on. That's or maybe it verbally is passed around, but it's not documented and available for everybody to follow. That's a big deal. If it's just a legend, right? It's a myth somewhere. It's a quote unquote unwritten rule in your organization. Bad.
yeah.
Unwritten rules, bad. Legends, bad. Myths, bad. Document all these things. If it's something that you're going to hold your team accountable to, you better have it written down in black and white so that you can say, this is what we're doing, that everybody has the same piece of paper, everybody knows the same game plan moving forward.
Yeah. If you have a process based bottleneck issue, and you're like not sure that you do a litmus test here. Okay. First question I want you to ask yourself: are all of your core processes figured out? Like, do you have them written down somewhere? Okay. If the answer is no, I don't even need to know your company. You have a process based issue. Okay. Of what magnitude? I don't know. But if you can't answer yes to that question, I'm going to say it's a pretty big magnitude. The next one I would say is this process based playbook you have available to all people who need it, or maybe who don't even need it? Because God forbid you get hit by a car or something and someone needs to do your job. Who can pick up that baton? Okay. So if you answer no to that question, got another problem. Do you have a way to train people based off your processes? Is it available to them all the time? Can they jump in and almost take a course that you have based off your processes? The answer is no. That's another development based on your process side. Do you have checklists for your team so that they know we need to do this, this, and this? And even though like each of those things on the checklist does link to a bigger like course, that the process gets bigger, do you have that checklist? If the answer is no, then you got another problem. And I'm not trying to like overwhelm you here. I just want you to know that if you're trying to make your company work in such a way, independent of who it is in that place, and you are like, oh no, we can totally do that, but the answer was no to all of those things, my response is there's no way in hell you can do that. Okay, there's no way that people are going to be able to replicate based off of your assumed and tribal knowledge that you've kept inside your head. Nobody else can grab that. So that's a problem. And again, not trying to overwhelm you. I just want you to see that the bottleneck at this point, you might be like, oh, we don't have a process-based bottleneck. But if you answered no to any of those, you do have a bottleneck. And a bottleneck's not a bad thing. I think we got to be so careful here. A bottleneck is a warning sign. Okay, it's a warning sign. It's the noise your kettle makes as it's heating up through that bottleneck, right? Through that little whistle right at the top. It's letting you know, hey, things are getting to the point they need to be at, but anymore, and this is going to boil over. We're going to have issues. Okay, so bottlenecks are a grace that we receive if we are looking for them. As soon as you aren't looking for them, they become problems, chaos, and disaster. And that's what we've got to be careful of. We want to create a mentality that has a culture of process, that people understand that the process is what moves the product or your team forward. So these bottlenecks, I know we're harping on it, but these bottlenecks are crucial to your growth.
Yeah, I know you were telling me before we started recording about this Anden cord thing that Toyota
Oh yeah.
implemented. Can you just kind of flesh that out for us real quick and kind of show us how that could be a solution for a process-based bottleneck?
Yeah. So lean manufacturing, lean process mentality always went through that like Toyota kata mentality that had this like the idea of an Anden cord, which actually goes to a deeper Japanese thing. I'm not even going to get into it, but this pull cord has always been kind of defined in this world of safety. Like that's how people have talked about it. Like, oh, hey, there's a problem, pull the cord. Now we have this safety mentality. We're making sure everyone's okay. And there's truth to that. But I think the thing people miss a lot of times is that cord was there to figure out bottlenecks quick. Okay. So what it was, this whole manufacturing line, there are multiple parts of putting the car together. Maybe there's a spot where the body's welded together. Then the next spot where you take the doors and put them onto. I don't know cars, so this is as close as you're getting to me understanding. I know there are doors and there's a body, but
I mean, you're
so,
wearing flannel. You look like you know about cars.
yeah, just I need a backwards hat right now is what I need. A
There you
little
go.
grease on my forehead, but
Profiling.
so well, okay. So anyway, the what there was is on each of these steps of the process that they had, there would be a pull cord that ran the whole length of the process. And as soon as it was pulled, everything stopped. And then get this, not just like the direct manager, everyone who was in charge of that process or the success of this came out to that one spot to figure out what the issue was, what the safety problem was, or what the bottleneck was. If someone even thought, I think I have a better idea, pop, they pull the cord. That's usually
Wow.
not the sound of a pull cord, okay? But I'm saying pop, okay?
I like it.
They pull it and there's a discussion about the bottleneck. They dealt with bottlenecks quickly in this process.
Mm.
And so this mentality just creates a culture that's looking for success. They're not looking for bottlenecks. The bottlenecks are going to show themselves. They're going to make noises.
Mm.
They're looking for what the answers are to it. Okay. And when you don't have a culture of this, the bottlenecks are assumed to be somebody else's problem. And
Yeah.
so
So
this, go ahead.
we're talking about streamlining communication here so that when those
Yeah.
situations arise, you have that proverbial pull cord, right? That you can kind of sound the alarm and go, all right, everybody, hang on. Here's a bottleneck. Let's address it, fix it. All right, now crank it back up again. It may not be a literal assembly line for you, but you're still pumping out product. You're still pumping out a process. You're still moving those things forward on a regular basis. And so, what we're saying here is that what I'm hearing you say, Blake, and what I think we're saying to our listeners and watchers today is that it's going to sound kind of deep or inception, but you're going to have a process in place to identify the process based bottlenecks, right?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like, okay, I got a headache from what I just said here, but yeah, I got to have a process in place to identify process based bottlenecks,
Yeah.
just like we heard in the story with the Anden cord. So, anything else on process based before we get into people, Blake? Awesome. So we're going to get into this is going to be a little bit more intrinsic, a little bit more detailed because people are more intrinsic and detailed than processes are, right? There's so many variants, and we're just going to talk about a few of the variants today. The first issue, obviously, that we read about in the definition was a labor shortage, right?
Mm.
It's a labor shortage could be a bottleneck issue for you. That is a people thing, but more specifically, it's a quantity of people issue, It's not a character issue. It's not a training or development issue. This is an issue of just I don't have enough people, so we are bottlenecking this thing.
Yeah.
So Blake, talk to us about what to do when there is a bottlenecking due to quantity or labor shortage.
Yeah, first, I think we got to come to this overcome mentality again, because this is one of those areas, kind of like policy, that the way we've always believed about labor, oh, we're just had a labor shortage. You can't find good people. First off, get over that hump. Got to get over that real quick, because that mindset's not going to serve you. Then I think it becomes a strategy for hiring and retention. And it's building something around those two areas of, if I've got a bottleneck due to the quantity of people in my organization, then I need to figure out how to find the right people who are going to do the stuff I need the right way at the right time. That's when you start really investigating and building strategy around when that happens. You build strategy around what are the triggers that makes that happen, right? So as a bottleneck happens, again, a warning sign, are we listening to the warning signs? Is there a way to have your bottleneck have another bottleneck for it to trigger, hey, you're getting close to a bottleneck, you need to hire so you can train and develop? Like, you really want to implement that part of a strategy. And then also, if you're already experiencing a bottleneck in the labor area, which I'd say probably 80% of companies are right now, if you're already experiencing that, how do you keep your people? And if you're not thinking through those things and it's just like, oh, not a big deal, we keep people because they've been here for a year. Well, that's a lagging indicator. Like, they could leave easily. So I think that's what I would say about the quantity aspect.
Yeah, I had this image while you were speaking there, Blake, and just kind of talking about having those triggers for these different bottlenecks. Do you remember the game Mousetrap? Board game?
Yep.
Like a board game Mousetrap. Essentially, it was like this marble kind of obstacle. One thing triggers another thing, kind of a domino effect type of game, right? That you could play and set up and have all these different. Hey, there's more than one way to build a mousetrap, right? So you can kind of set things off and set things in motion. This is really, I think, ultimately what we're getting at here is. I love what Blake said about not letting it be an excuse of, oh, that's just the way it is. There's just a labor shortage. That's just a policy. Like that mindset will keep you from having the company and the success that you so desire. Like you need to go, okay, we kind of need to MacGyver the thing every now and then. And that's an old reference for the older people. Okay, I'm not talking about Twilight. I don't know why you went all vampire on me.
I didn't go vampire. I just popped my collar, which was more like a Knight Rider kind of thing.
Knight Rider. Yep, Knight Rider. But yeah, the mousetrap mentality of being able just to get crafty with it, get creative with it. Like, use your creative brain, use the creative people that are around you to strategize a way to have these triggers go off every time they go off, and then go, okay, you know what? We're not going to accept the bottleneck for what it is. We're going to fix it. And that leads us into our next kind of people-based bottlenecking issue. Is sometimes, Blake, it's a training or a development issue. And I'll say first, I want to take this first one. I'll give the second one to you. But I will say, I think something that can kind of prevent this preventative maintenance, like we talked about with our friends Mario and Luigi in the beginning. Preventative maintenance here would be to know your team's intentions. Right. So we've hired them. We've got the solution there, right? They're on board, but now we're training and developing them. If you know their intentions, then you can stop the bottlenecking before it starts. Maybe they have great intentions. Maybe their intentions aren't quite lining up with your intentions. Maybe they're less than great. Maybe they're not up to your standards. Whatever it is, knowing that information, knowing what their intentions are with their job, with their goals, where do they see themselves, that kind of answering, or that kind of line of questioning, that's going to get you to understand them a little bit more, which will prevent the bottlenecking and the training and development, people-based bottlenecking.
Yeah, for sure. And in that, I think you just, like we said, bottlenecks are just their warnings. Okay. They are issues that need to be dealt with, but they're early stage issues and ones that need to be taken care of so that you can have long-term success. And I know development and training is one people don't love investing in because they can't see the tangible return.
It's a long play.
It is. It's a very long play. But if you want to, like Dustin was talking about, have the successful team here in 5 to 10 years that works and does it, that laughs when you're around because they don't need you. And I know that sounds hurtful, but honestly, that's the game. Then you've got to develop. You've got to see where to develop. And I would say, don't let it be overwhelming. Go look for the area that needs it most. Go look. I mean, this is like snowball debt reduction, right? Like you look for the one that you can pay off the quickest, that's the most immediate. And if you take care of it, then you can move your energy and effort into the other ones. Same thing right here. How do you take the energy and effort, focus on one that is a problem, but you can take care of it the quickest, build the process of dealing with the bottleneck, and then go from that point and go on. So that's how I would say on the training solution. The last one with people-based issues that I think is really like we need to dig in on, especially for leaders and especially for those managers who just greatly believe that and I'm going to say it, that we are God's gift to this world of process and everything we do, and is ego. Ego becomes a huge bottleneck. It becomes a huge bottleneck to everything we do. If your ego's in the way, that bottleneck it's going to do damage. And there are two ways I think that ego can become a damaging factor. And one is when you believe you're the only person who can do something. Okay? That's an ego issue. I'm the only, if I do it, let someone else do it, they're going to do it like way less percentage as me. Yeah, probably, because you're the only one who's been doing it. And of course, nobody's going to do it as good as you. But book we both, I think, just read was I think you told me about it, the Buy Back Your Time. And he has a phrase he says over and over. He's like, even if they do it 80% good and you get them to doing it 80% as good as you, 80% is 100% awesome, because now your effort in that area is now being used on something else that is more attuned to what you need to be doing. Okay. Yeah. So finding ways to delegate become important there. The other aspect of ego. Okay. This is the dark side of ego. The other one I think is pretty obvious. The dark side of ego becomes this idea of cognitive bias. Okay. The way that we believe I'm the only one who has the answers here, or I know the answers to all the problems you're going to bring up because I've worked them through in my head. Therefore, I just know that won't work. Anytime someone brings up something as an issue, and we kind of go back to this process-based world, for example, like let's say we go to that and cord mentality, and there's this idea that there's something wrong in an issue, and someone does a pull cord, and your immediate response is, what's the problem? And they say, this is the problem. And you're like, I've already dealt with this before. Here's the answer. And it's the way we've always done it. It works. It's good enough. That becomes really dangerous. And I feel like a lot of our big catastrophes we've seen in our world a lot of times come from these cognitive biases. Okay. The Columbia disaster that happened in 2003, which I was so surprised that was 2003. But in short, like there was a thermal protection system that was faulty. Okay. And it was damaged. Well, it was damaged on takeoff. 19 days later, when they were coming back into the atmosphere, that's when the disaster happened. Okay. And you can read up more on that, but that's when the disaster happened. Now, here's the thing. There was the pull cord and in mentality of let's talk about these issues. Let's talk about these processes. Let's talk about these things. And everything that they brought up was answered by this idea of cognitive bias that they already knew the problem and answered. And so it became an ego thing. And they said, oh, it's not a problem. Don't worry about that. Here's the answer. Instead of going and dealing with that thing. And it sounds harsh, but at the end, lives were lost because of this, right? Like this was no small thing. They didn't take the bottleneck calling out. They didn't take it and take it to the level it should have been. And that's going and seeing the damage, going and dealing with the things, figuring out a way to solve the problem, the bottleneck issues. And so our ego becomes the dark side of a good, productive team. Our ego that thinks I'm the only one who can do it, or our ego that says I'm the only one who knows the answers, you will not go as far as you want. You hear the story about, like, if you want, or the adage that if you want to go fast, do it by yourself, but if you want to go far, do it with others. That's the adage we need here. And that's, if you want to get away from bottlenecks and you want to get yourself even out of that bottleneck mentality, you've got to start believing this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really nothing else to add to that. I mean, I feel like a place that we should all look at anytime a situation arises, whether it's bottlenecking or a bad process or a bad hire or a sale gone bad or whatever. We should all look internally first before we start looking externally.
Yeah.
And this is what we're getting at here with this particular bottleneck, is that you need to look internally first and understand, is this something that I am causing inadvertently a lot of times, but subconsciously it could be happening. So take a look inside. That's a good place to start for your bottlenecking. So that's our two P's for people and process-based bottlenecking. Like I said, we may hit the party-based and policy-based one down the road, but we just encourage you to strategize through those things as well. Again, get creative. Think about the different ways that you can strategize around these bottlenecks, because they're gonna happen. It's gonna come. It's just a matter of time. A bottleneck, like Blake said, doesn't mean you're a failure. It just is a new opportunity for you to figure out a new way around it. Unclog that thing. There are some preventative ways to stop it from happening, like we talked about today, but in the long run, it's going to happen. It's going to rain. Better have a strategy for it and think creatively about it when you get there. So next time we're going to be back, episode 30 episodes, Blake. We're adults now. I mean, people say 21, you're an adult. I feel like your adulthood really starts at 30.
Yeah, it is the new coming to age.
It is the new coming to age. So with that in mind, our topic next time is going to be skepticism. A silent killer of culture. So can't wait to talk to y'all about that then. Talk to you next time on the Culture Based Podcast.